When I was in the process of buying my flat, I met the freeholder himself. He was charming, nice, developed over 150 units in France with his own money. He ticked all the boxes, so what could possibly go wrong? In this video, I look at the fact whether this freeholder could actually be the worst freeholder in England, along with my experience and everything I would recommend you check with your freeholder before purchasing a leasehold flat. Before we get into the video, I just want to share what a freeholder actually is. If you're new to this channel or if you're not sure about leasehold property, a freeholder is sometimes known as a landlord as well, and it basically means that they own the property that your flat or your leasehold flat resides on. You also enter into a lease agreement with your freeholder, which I call a glorified rental agreement. This lays out everything to do with your flat pertaining service charges, ground rent, alterations, and everything else. So now we've got that covered, let's head on to my experience with what might be the worst freeholder in England. So I'm not going to be naming names in this video, but there's probably going to be a few people watching this that might actually know who it is, especially if you are in the property circle. Now, the freeholder, as I'd mentioned, he developed 150 units in France. He came over to the UK and he set up a freehold company with another lady who was involved in property, and they decided to purchase a big Georgian property in Plymouth and redevelop it into 5 flats. Property in France and how it works is completely different to that in England. Now, leasehold is completely archaic, it's a complete scandal, it's a money-making scheme, and it doesn't actually exist in places like France. So how could a property developer slash freeholder get it so wrong in England? Now, the purchase of my leasehold flat took 5 months to go through. There was so many bumps in the road, and that was because the lease had to be drawn up completely from scratch. It was a property that was being redeveloped into 5 flats, which meant there had been no previous lease agreement, there was no freeholder in place, so they were essentially doing something they'd never ever done before. There was lots of things that got changed in the lease during the process, back and forth with solicitors. Again, I was naive back then, I was being led by my solicitor and I put all my trust into them. I had no idea about leasehold and all the complexities that come with it and what was in store for me in the future. The ground rent had been changed from £50 to £250 a year, and service charges were very grey. There was no real figure about what they were going to cost, and other than that, I really wanted the sale to go through. Like I said, I'd met the freeholder myself. It wasn't like a faceless English-based freeholding company I'd never met before. There was no information online about him, and I really trusted him and thought it was going to be really good. So the day that the flat purchase went through, it was my first property. I was so excited, and honestly, this is literally where everything started to go south. I turned up to the property and I did not have a single key to the property I had just purchased. I had to go to the builders who had just started building the 5th flat because the money had come through from my purchase. I had to borrow a key and get my own key cut for my property. There was only one other back key that was available with an estate agent, and the estate agent wouldn't even get it cut for me as well. I had to wait another 2 days until I finally had a back door key and didn't have to leave my door propped open when I left. Now, I could be here all day telling you what went wrong, but this is what happened next. The address had never been registered, so I couldn't get Wi-Fi on the property. I had to pay out of my own money to get it split into flats, which was I think around £50 at the time. I'd already had to pay for my keys to be cut, which he didn't refund. There were no bins on the property. I was just told I had to use the social housing bins, which was completely inaccurate. The hot water hadn't been fitted correctly. Instead, I was just told to use the immersion heater constant. There was never an aerial fitted as there was promised. I couldn't get a permit parking space in the property. It was actually exempt because the freeholder had decided to change the property from 4 to 5 flats, which made it exempt, and I lived in an area where there was no parking. There was only one small free car park, and it basically meant I wouldn't be able to leave my house on a weekend if I wanted to come back in the day, and I would only ever be able to get a space if I was there very early in the morning or after 5 o'clock in the evening. I was completely stuffed. There was no water meters or electric meters set up into individual flats, and there was no way of getting this solved because the address still wasn't showing up in the system because he hadn't paid for it to be split. And I forgot to mention, on the day that I moved in, all the dressing furniture was still in place in the property because my flat was the one that was being shown to everyone for flat 5, which still hadn't been finished. As you can imagine, it was so dirty everywhere. It'd been being used for viewings for literally weeks. So I moved into the property. I had to get the builders to move everything out, and I then had to deep clean the property, which literally took over a day. Now, during this time, there were so many other issues that hadn't been resolved. The intercom didn't work, there wasn't a post box that was working, it was broken, anyone could open the post, and in this time there was a drug dealer that moved into the flat above me who was causing me a living hell. Now, let's fast forward 2 years. I actually hadn't paid any service charges, any ground rent, and this freeholder had suddenly disappeared off the face of the earth, leaving behind his joint business owner who had no idea about anything to do with owning a freehold of a property. Now, in this time, I was still living in such resentment towards this freeholder. He made my first purchase a living hell. I had such a bad time. Nothing was sorted. I couldn't pay for bills. I was worried that everything was mounting up. It actually took 6 months in the end for the electricity to be sorted in my name, and the water bill still wasn't sorted. So they were literally getting one central bill and splitting it between 5 flats. I really wanted him to get his comeuppance, and if anyone's been through a bad experience, it can be really difficult to let things lie and just try and forget about it and stop wasting your energy on people like this. However, I wanted to do some digging on him. I'd actually never really looked up anything about him since I purchased the property. I knew he was very big in the property circle. He was very flamboyant on Facebook, he was actively talking on LinkedIn, and he also had a YouTube channel which is still available for viewing today. He made himself out to be a property developer, a guru, a mentor, and he was very good at turning someone else's money into something. Now, I stumbled upon something very interesting called Property Tribes. It's basically a forum that property developers, people interested in property can come and share their thoughts and reply to people's threads. And there was one thread on this specific man at the time, and I could not believe the stuff I was reading. He had been taking thousands and thousands of pounds from people pretending to be a mentor and getting them to sign up to joint ventures, saying that he required money in advance to do it. One person that I saw in the forum had over £40,000 taken from this man, and he completely fled. They said a few years ago that to this date they still had not received any money back from them, and seemingly this person has disappeared off the face of the earth. And further digging, he'd already been made bankrupt in France, and I believe a similar thing happened in England as well. And when I was at the flat, he continued to get late payment letters through the post, which obviously he never picked up. Now, if you were to watch this man, this property developer, freeholder, whatever you want to call him, you would eat into his words. He's so charming. He seemingly knows a lot what he's talking about, but he is the biggest con man I have ever come across. And this guy is the gift that keeps on giving. After our freehold was finally purchased by a large freeholder in the UK, suddenly an electricity bill reared its ugly head from 2016 when building developments were going underway. Suddenly, we were being asked to pay towards a £3,000 communal bill which had never been paid for by the freeholder. Now, I guess I suspected that something like this would have happened at some point, but when it hit our faces literally 4 years later, I just could not believe it. The audacity of this man. Now, luckily, I fought my case. All of the leaseholders came together on it and we fighted against this issue, so we didn't have to pay it. The £3,000 bill still remains unpaid, and I'm sure there's lots of other bills out there that haven't been as well. I even spoke to the builders during the time that they were still at the flat. They'd had many invoices that hadn't been paid as well, and they too had been approached at a property event. They were taken in by his charm, and seemingly that it could be a really good working relationship. Now, whilst the freeholder that took over from him and his business partner charged a lot more money, and there were so many issues when I was selling my flat, and whilst I hate everything about it, and you have a freeholder that is not connected with anyone, they're airy-fairy, they don't really know what they're doing, you could be set up for a whole world of troubles. If he was still the freeholder, I probably would never have been able to sell my flat because I needed so many different things like asbestos surveys, health and safety, fire safety, and he just had no idea about any of that, and I could have been months down the line and everything could have fallen through. Whilst things are so much more expensive with a very large freeholder, you kind of know where you stand with them because everything is invoiced in advance, and I am not advocating for leasehold at all because it is the worst thing that I ever did, and I've got a video on that which I'll link in the comments below as well. But when you have someone that you cannot contact who's the freeholder of your property, it makes things so much more difficult. You don't know where you stand, and you're constantly worried about what that big bill is going to be 6 months down the line. I wanted to share my experience today because it is so important that if you are still purchasing a leasehold flat, you need to know everything you can about the freeholder before you purchase. It's going to save you a lot of money, it's going to save you stress, and it's going to save you from a whole world of troubles that I went through when I purchased a leasehold. I actually think you need to be following a checklist when you are sort of doing your due diligence on a freeholder. I've popped a brief checklist up on the screen here which you can screenshot, but briefly you need to search who your freeholder is on Google. It's going to reveal a lot about them. My freeholder, Urban Point Limited, who was the second freeholder I had, there was lots and lots of not very good articles about them online, so that was a real good indicator of what I was going to expect from them. Secondly, join the Facebook group, which is the National Leasehold Campaign on Facebook. Search their name in the group. There's sure to be someone that has them as their freeholder, or they've experienced something with them, and if not, just ask the question in the group and see what they come back with. Obviously, the most important thing, you need to know what the ground rent is, you need an indication of service charges, and also ask if you can look at the last 2 years of accounts. It's going to give you an idea of how much the service charges have increased by over the last 2 years, so it gives you a bit of an indication of what you might expect money-wise in the next couple of years. Obviously, when you Google them, check their reviews. This is very telling. If you have a bad experience, you're likely going to hear about it online, and if there's good reviews, then you might be onto a winner with them. And if you're going through the purchase stage now and you've got your copy to their lease, please read it with a fine-tooth comb. It is the terms and conditions you must read. This is no instruction manual. Please read everything from front to back because there may be some specific clauses in there which may ring up alarm bells, and you need to get further clarification on with your solicitor before proceeding. So there we have it. I am free from that freeholder. I will never ever purchase a leasehold property again, and as far as I'm aware, the freeholder is now living somewhere like Fiji, and they've reinvented themselves as a crypto trader, which funnily enough seems very likely and something they would do. Now, if you have a really bad experience with a freeholder, perhaps you've had a good experience, please leave it in the comments below because it's really helpful for people that are watching this video and considering purchasing leasehold. Now, if you enjoyed watching my video today, please do give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel. I've got loads of other videos about leasehold on my channel. I'll link a few of them in the comments below. But other than that, have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video.